Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Can you hear me and see me okay? You can give me a thumbs up just to make sure that everything is running smoothly. That would be very appreciated. Awesome. Thank you. So it seems that we are ready to go. Okay. Let's see if we can do this through here. Okay. StreamYard it is. Excuse me, I'm trying to get the slides. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so today lesson it's called Solving Vocab and Context GRE Questions. We are basically going to go over a bit of the structure of the vocabulary and context, the type of question, when you're going to see them, why they're important, and then we're going to look at some examples, break those down, talk a little bit about the common traps that we have for those or how to avoid them and the strategy to solve them effectively and quickly. But first, I would like to introduce myself in case you don't know me or you haven't seen me before. My name is Arianne. Hi, you can call me Ari. And I am a live class instructor and content creator here at Magoosh. I also work as an academic specialist. So if you are familiar with the Magoosh website, I am that person that answers the questions whenever you are unsure about something and you send in a question, maybe there's a very strong possibility that you get an email from me. Well, some of my loves and interests include going to the museums. I like to travel a lot, especially if I can use my friends as an excuse. I like reconnecting with friends, meeting people along the way. And currently, I am trying to teach my TikTok algorithm to only show me cat videos. You know how the algorithm picks up on many different things and the For You page? Well, I made it my goal so that I go to the For You page, and as I scroll, all the things that I can see are cats, funny or cute cats. I currently live in Washington, D.C. with my best friend Melanie and my 4-year-old cat Melon, who, if maybe it's a little bit blurred, but she is sleeping right here. So if you see her moving, I hope that's not too distracting. If not, just quickly acknowledge her, say hi, and then we can continue with our lesson. All right, first, let's go over some housekeeping items, some rules, or some items to keep in mind. First, this recording it's live right now, but it's going to be recorded and you will have access to it for an indefinite amount of time afterwards. So if for some reason you need to step away, take a break, go eat a snack, walk your dog, anything, rest assured that this lesson is still going to be here, if not now or today, from tomorrow and onwards. Also, we'll have spaces for question and answers throughout the lesson. So feel free to leave your answers in chat, but if I don't get to those immediately, I will go over them once we reach one of those breakpoints, or not checkpoints for questions is what I meant to say. Please be ready to participate. The more interactive this is, the more you will get out of it, and the funner it is for me as well, because unfortunately I don't get to see you, but I get to interact with you through your comments, your emojis, your questions. So type your life away if you want, send me jokes, laugh at my really cringy dad jokes, and yes, as soon as you have a question, feel free to drop that in the chat. And finally, if for some reason we ran out of time and I didn't get to your question, please keep in mind that we have a help@magoosh.com email. You can send those questions there, and either I will answer them or somebody else on my team will answer them. It can be about the GRE in general. It can be about Magoosh, how to sign up, how to use it, how to sign up for a free trial, or about one of the questions that we talk about in this class as well. Okay. Now, who is this class for? This class is designed to help students trying to improve is designed to help students who are trying to improve their GRE verbal score. So if you're just starting your study prep journey, this will be especially helpful for you. But if you've been studying for a while now, I still think that you will find helpful tricks or tips to apply moving forward. So this should be still a worthwhile lesson for you to check out. And I just wanted to touch base on vocabulary, because yes, there's nuance in the vocabulary and context questions, because they're not just pure vocabulary, whether you know the definition or not. That's why we can use strategy here, right? But I do want to emphasize that learning vocabulary is still a very important skill for the GRE, for the verbal section, excuse me. This is because 50%, around half of the questions, will be vocabulary driven. Most of them will be within the sections or the question types of sentence equivalence and text completion, which we will not cover in this class, but we have plenty of other videos about them in our YouTube channel if you want to check those out. Besides the sentence equivalence and text completion, there's also the reading comprehension questions. And some of those questions can incorporate GRE vocabulary. Those are specifically the ones that we're going to be going over today. All right, so what are our goals? What should we accomplish by the end of this lesson, by the end of this hour? Well, we want to make sure that we understand the structure of the vocabulary and context questions. We also will learn the techniques to approach these questions regardless of the length of the passage. And hopefully that will help us and set us up for success so we can avoid the common traps. And all right, first, do we have any questions before we dive into our class? Well, no questions. Let's jump in. Okay, so here's a little overview of the reading comprehension questions that I talked to you about earlier. Verbal has 3 types of questions in general. We have text completion, sentence equivalence, reading comprehension. Now, within reading comprehension, there are more subtypes. Vocabulary and context is one of those. So what do these reading comprehension questions look like? By the way, quick aside, if you're just starting out studying for your GRE, this is a very important section to pay attention to, because it will help dissect and give you overall information on how the GRE is structured, or at least this verbal section. But if you've already been preparing for this for a while, take this as a very light review, okay? Okay, reading comprehension questions. These are the ones that have a passage, a text, a paragraph, and they can be short or medium, or they can be on the longer side, like those texts that you have to scroll up and down for. Because they vary in length, you will have varying amounts of questions, all of them regarding to that specific passage. So you will see a passage, and then you will have anywhere between 1 to 6 questions just about that passage. Vocabulary and context questions will be found for any passage length and any difficulty level. So don't brush up, don't think that just because one passage is short, you're going to get just one question. You might get 3 or 4 on that. And it's good to be prepared and to know the strategies to approach these questions, because you will see them regardless of the level that the algorithm is sending to you, the difficulty level that the algorithm picks up based on your previous performance. Somebody asked the question, are we going to learn vocabulary in this class? Well, yes and no. We are not going to go over vocabulary as in I'll show you a question, I show you a word and then tell you the definition, or quiz you on the definition of words. But if you see a word that you are unfamiliar with, that will certainly be a learning opportunity for you. So I think we can learn some vocabulary in this lesson. whether we mean it or not. And can we get a PDF? No, but you can still have access to this presentation. So you can go back to it, you can rewind, you can review as many times as you need and take notes if that's what you need the PDF for. Okay, sounds good? Okay, so this is what the vocabulary and context question is going to look like. The stem, the question stem, is going to go somewhere along the lines of based on the passage, in the context in which it can be found, blank word most nearly means or closely resembles the definition of all these other words, right? And they're going to give you 5 options. And that was kind of the I like to call the skeleton or outline of a question type, but this is what it would actually look like. You have your passage to the left, and then you have your question to the right. Now, before you look into this question and try to answer it yourself, I want you to stop for a second so we can kind of agree on the way that we're going to proceed with these questions, okay? We're going to talk about strategy and solving questions. But again, if there's any doubt or anything that I can clarify that I just said earlier that wasn't really, that you're not sure about, please let me know in chat. But okay, going into strategy. First, we need to know our enemy, right? And that's why we went over the structure. But how do we actually go and tackle these questions? Well, I want you to treat it like a text completion question, which will sound weird because these questions, as you saw, the structure, they don't look like text completion at all. Usually those you have a fill in the blank and they're just 1 sentence or 2 sentence long text or excerpts, right? Well, what I want you to do is I want you to read the sentence, and then whatever the word is, I want you to pretend that it is not there. And once you create this fictitious blank, fill in the blank opportunity, I want you to come up with your own word before you even look at the answer choices. Now, the biggest challenge here and the mistake that most students make is reading the answer choices and plugging them back into the passage. Why is this a mistake? Why is this so not difficult, but why is this so dangerous, I would say? It's because the people who write these exams, the GRE, the ETS question writers, they're very smart and they know who their audience is. They know what to expect and what people will want to, they will design questions and give you the answer choices that will trick you into thinking that those are right. Because sometimes the answer choices, if you plug them into the passage, they sound correct. However, we need to remember that we want to talk about the word itself. There's one word in questions that we're being asked about the definition in the context. So we need to make sure that the answer choice that we pick is part of the definition of that word. Because sometimes there are other words that are not the definition. They're not textbook definition or dictionary definition, but they could make sense if you plug them back into the passage. They will just create some nuance or change the meaning in a very subtle way. But remember, the answer must always, always, always be a dictionary definition of the word in question. Okay. Somebody asked, is it necessary to know the meaning of all the options, or we can just do by after reading the passage? Well, good thing we have this strategy that we're going to do with predicting our own answer will help us eliminate answers, or at least it will help us use process of elimination and bring the 5 answer choices down to at least 1 or 2. So even if you don't know the definitions or of all the answer choices, if you do find one answer choice that closely resembles your prediction, then you can be certain that that's the correct answer. And if it doesn't, if there's one word that you know is nothing like the prediction that you came up with, and there's another question that you don't know the definition of, perhaps that word is the one that matches your prediction. You just don't know it because you don't know the definition. But if you can confidently eliminate that other question, that other answer choice, then you know for sure that you will select that word that you're very much taking an educated guess in this case. But if you make educated guesses the right way, chances are you will get that right. Okay, so are we ready to go into our first question? I think you are. Okay, let's check it out. Here we have, in the context in which it appears, adopted most nearly means, and we have all the answer choices. Don't look at them. Don't look at them yet. I know it's tempting, but let's go to the passage. And thankfully, I have highlighted this word so it's easy to find. We have adopted, so we should read not only the sentence where it is, where adopted is, but we should read either a little bit before, and if that's not enough to give us enough context, then we should read a little bit after. So we see here that adopted is in the sentence that starts in indeed. We can go up to most art historians. That's the sentence before. Okay, so most art historians describe the movement in part as an extreme extension of Van Gogh's post-impressionism. Indeed, Fauve's leader, Henri Matisse, is known to have adopted the intense, bright-color impressionist style inherent to Fauvism after John Russell introduced him to Van Gogh's work. Okay, so we're talking about Matisse being another painter who adopted the style that Van Gogh made famous, right? But let's apply the strategy. Let's pretend this is a text completion question and get rid of the word. We know it's adopted, but let's take it out. Let's keep it in the back of our mind. And now let's fill in that blank with our own prediction. Another word that is not adopted, but that will keep the same meaning. Can anyone in chat give me an answer? Or let's go over this together and then I'll let you guys try it on your own. All right, so we have again. Indeed, Fauve's leader, Henri Matisse, is known to have blank the intense bright color impressionist style. I want to say used, right? Because Van Gogh created this style or made this style famous, and then after Matisse was introduced to it by John Russell, Matisse started using that same style. So let's put used here. And this is my prediction. Okay? That is step one. After my prediction, or I should say step two, because first step is taking out the word, making it a blank. Second step is putting in my own prediction word. Third step will be matching that prediction with the answer choices. Now I can go look at the answer choices without being swayed or persuaded into making one fit the passage, okay? So keeping used in mind, let's go over the answer choices. A, we have ratified. Ratified is sort of a formal word. So it's when you make something into a law. This doesn't really fit here because this is just one painter using another painter's style, right? Embraced. Embrace means accepting or adopting something, right? Which this is a good contender. Let's leave it there. Let's go over the other answer choices. And if those don't work, then we can go back to embrace. Adapted. Adapted looks very close to adopted, but means very there's a little bit of nuance in between those two. Adapted has a connotation of change, as in you take something and you adapt it so it can fit something else, or it can fit to your own style. in the passage, we are not led to believe that there's any sort of change. So we can eliminate that one. D, fostered. Fostered is good because it does, adopted and foster have a lot in common, but also think about the connotation in which foster is used. Foster is when you take in something or someone, like the fostering care system, and you help them grow, you nurture them. In the sentence, if we go back to the passage, we are not told about anything in terms of Matisse growing this impressionist style. We just know that that he used it. So fostered, it's debatable whether you want to eliminate it or not, but the nuance there is a little bit off from what we're looking for, which is more straight to the point. And seized, the connotation in this one is more violent, is somebody that takes something aggressively or by force. So that one really doesn't fit. So we're left with embraced and fostered. And embraced is our correct answer here. How do we feel? How do we feel about this process? Do we have any questions? Does it make sense? Do we see why embrace is the correct answer, or do we disagree? Okay, no disagreement means that we can keep moving on. Okay, let's go on to question 2. Look at the question. We have, in the context in which it appears, whether most nearly means all the other answers. And we see that whether is a little bit on the lower side of this passage. I'm going to give you guys a bit of time. I'm going to set up the timer for about a minute and a half. And then we're going to do the same problem together. But I'm going to ask you what your prediction is. Okay? And starting the timer now. All right, 10 more seconds. And that should be about 1 minute. Just a reminder, you don't need to read the whole passage in order to answer these vocabulary and context questions. Chances are you will have more questions for a given passage, so you might have already skimmed from beginning to end, or you might have read the whole passage depending on how fast you read. But when you get to these BIC questions, feel free to not have to reread everything else, but just focus on the part where the word is. Okay, so hopefully that gave you enough time to treat this as a text completion question, get rid of whether, and now what word do we think would be a good substitution and something to plug into this blank? Does anybody have a suggestion? Reading again, it says, 2 things perhaps account for this oversight. For one, any pianist for whom no extant recordings exist is likely not to blank time well. It's likely not to blank time. blank. I like something like when something doesn't do something in terms of time, it's usually something that doesn't hold up to time well, something that doesn't age well. Here we're talking about Chopin, who is a pianist, and talking about how other pianists who don't have extant recordings, meaning works that are still being played presently. That means that even though they were great, they did not resist the passage of time well, so they didn't hold up to. That is my prediction. Okay, so once our prediction is made, we go to the question, look at the answer choices, and then try to match those. Okay. Option A, we have perish. Perish is to die. This is the opposite, if anything, of what we're looking for. We're looking for something that is to hold up to resist. So we can eliminate confidently A. What about B? B is subsist. I can see how subsist is attempting option, but again, let's think of the nuance of each word and how they're used on other connotations, on other contexts. Subsist is more when you're barely surviving, right? Or when you're just existing. So we can choose, I would eliminate it, but if you're not completely sold on it, you can keep it there until we find a better option. Withstand. Withstand seems like a better fit here. It is stronger. It comes with a more positive connotation. It talks about enduring, resisting the passage of time. Weather, right? Then I like withstand, and it is certainly a definition of weather, because weather, oops, and there goes Melon waking up, excuse me. Weather, it's not just as climate or the meteorological aspect of the word, but weather as in like when you're resisting something, when you're weathering something, you're withstanding. So I like withstand. Let's see the other options. D, transform. That is changing, so that doesn't fit our prediction at all. And sustain, again, that means when something goes unchanged for some time, but it doesn't have the positive resistance or endurance connotation that withstand has. Also, whether sustain and weather are not synonyms either. Therefore, our correct answer here is withstand. How are we feeling? Thumbs up, thumbs down, feeling so-and-so? Let me know in chat. Okay, let me see something. Okay, it's time for exercise 3 then. Here, in the context in which it appears, imprint most nearly means. So let's go into our passage. Let's read not just once, not just the sentence, but let's read a little bit before. The treatment of three-dimensional form in the later paintings of Paul Cézanne was a primary influence. Paul Gauguin, some of whose paintings bore the imprint of the native culture of the South Pacific Islands, where he lived for years, was another source of inspiration. Okay, so we're talking about Paul G., an artist who has paintings, and they bore blank of the native culture of the South Pacific Islands. All right, so paintings that take something from a native culture. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know that there is some sort of sign, there is some sort of indicator, right? That we have this influence of this native culture, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put evidence. There is some sort of evidence, that's my prediction, that this culture influenced the paintings. So with that prediction, let's go over to our answer choices. All right. First, remember we are talking about imprint, but our alternative or substitute to imprint is evidence. So A, we have pattern. Pattern is a little bit too specific, because if we go back to the passage, we know that there's some some influence, some evidence, some signs of the culture, but we don't know exactly what it is. We don't know if there's like a strike pattern or circular pattern. We don't know anything about how the paintings are visually. So we could eliminate A. Same thing with B. Logo is, again, too specific, because there's nothing telling us that there's a specific symbol that represents this Pacific Island native culture. So eliminate B. For option C, caption. Caption will be a written description or something that goes along with a painting or a visual art. In this case, we don't know if there's any sort of caption for these paintings. Therefore, we have to eliminate as well. Coloring, same thing, too specific. We don't know any colors. We don't know if the artist used blue, red, yellow, green. So our only choice left is mark, which does fit the dictionary definition of imprint and also matches well with our prediction of evidence. Just something that let us know that there's a connection between the culture and the painting. There's a mark. Let me see. Let me check if chat has any questions that I haven't answered yet. Okay, it looks like we're feeling good about this exercise. Now, if they look too easy now, be ready, because the next ones we're going to go progressively from easier to medium to harder. Okay? And I would like for one of these later questions, I want to let you all do the whole shebang, the whole strategy on your own and see how you do. All right, exercise 4. As used in the final sentence, plausible most nearly means, and we have A through E. Again, we go back to our passage, and here, unfortunately, I didn't highlight it, but I underlined it just so it's easier to see. I'm gonna give you some time to read, and then we can go over this together. Okay, that should be about 1 minute. And remember, we're trying to see what plausible mostly resembles to. So we put in our blank, and we try to figure out what we can substitute that blank with. Reading a little bit ahead, or leading up to that sentence, we have however. however, indicates that the author clearly disagrees with Murray. So the author then presents what he or she believes is a more plausible view. In this sense, it doesn't seem that the author will be talking about the accepted view, right? We're talking about here, like, what are the reasons for couples to try to conceive, right? But rather, they're talking about something that is more likely. They're going against what what Murray is saying, and they're proposing something that is more plausible, aka something more likely, something more believable, right? So I'm gonna go ahead with likely as my prediction word. And now let's go over to our answer choices. All right. So we have A, accepted. Accepted would be the opposite, or not the opposite, but we're talking about something that is likely, but it's not widely accepted. In fact, the author of this passage is saying the widely accepted idea or theory is that of Murray's, but I'm giving you another one, something that is more likely. So accepted is not the correct answer here. B, common. Again, we're not looking here for common. If anything, we're looking for an uncommon theory or point of view, but something that maybe people haven't thought about before, but that could pretty much explain this phenomenon. C, credible. Credible is very close to likely. It is very close to plausible. This is a good contender. I like this. Let's put a happy face next to it. D, praiseworthy. Now, praiseworthy on the spectrum of positive and negative is just way too over the top. It's not, we're not trying to say that one is better or praiseworthy. One theory is more praiseworthy than the other one, but more than one is more likely, more plausible. So D is too extreme, and E is too extreme. It says controversial, but on the opposite way. We don't know if that opinion is controversial by everyone, like if other people, if the audience, or if the people in the world that this author is living in, if they think that his or her opinion is controversial. We don't know that. We will be assuming, inferring something. So, and also that doesn't match our word plausible. Therefore, our correct answer would be C, credible. Okay, are we ready to turn up the notch on that difficulty level? Because I am. So, exercise number 5. We're getting through these a lot quicker than I thought, but good. That gives us more time for questions later on. Okay, exercise 5. In the context in which it appears, monolithic most nearly means, let's go back to our passage. Let's find monolithic. It's right there, almost at the bottom of the passage, and let's read it. Again, 1 minute to read, 1 minute to come up with our little prediction. Okay, as we approach our minute, let's go ahead and put our little blank sticker on top of the word and see again what the context is here around it. we're talking about art, right? And meanings and symbols. So reading the sentence a bit before, it says, broadly speaking, modern art historians often lose sight of this fact, foisting some overarching symbolic narrative on a work that defies any such simple categorization. Okay? So, it is somewhat refreshing to learn that the reactions of audiences of the time were by no means blank. We know that before it was monolithic, but what can we substitute monolithic with? We're talking about how modern art historians, aka the experts, how they see art in one way, and then they create a symbolic narrative that pretty much puts the paintings or the art in one little box, right? Now, this author is saying it is somewhat refreshing, it is positive, it is a good thing to know that the reactions of audiences at the time, so not the experts, just people who are, they could have varying levels of expertise in art, or they can be complete amateurs, that the reactions were by no means that what did we say about the experts, how they were putting everything into a box, they were pretty uniform, right? Therefore the audiences didn't interpret the art the same way, so their reactions were by no means uniform, they weren't the same, they weren't monolithic, right? So now looking at the answer choices. All right, let's start by A. We have simplistic. Actually, let me ask if anyone is here actively participating. What did you guess? What did you choose for this answer choice? I'm interested to know, or curious, I would say. Oh, perhaps people are busy. No worries, it's okay. We can keep going. So I'll go over each of the answer choices. Simplistic. Simplistic would be it's a good contender, but we're not just trying to water down like the complexity. If anything, we're talking about different ways to regard something, different reactions, different points of view or interpretations, right? So simplistic, I will keep it there, but let's see if we can find a better answer here. Immense. Immense is talking about size. It's not talking about numbers per se or quantity, but it's talking about a big size. So immense doesn't quite fit. We can scratch that off. Archaic. Archaic is when we're talking about something that's kind of that is in another era but behind. So maybe this is a trap that's trying to get you to think about the 19th century, which is what the passage was about. But there was no, remember, we're talking as if we were in the 19th century, or being like keeping the context. We're not judging whether the views at that time were archaic or not. We're talking about how many different interpretations we had. So archaic, not a good fit. Undifferentiated. Okay, so undifferentiated, it fits the meaning of uniform because it means when things are pretty much very, very similar to each other, right? There's no way for you to differentiate between the different options. So, or not about the varying options that you have. So I like differentiated. I like it more than simplistic. Let's see the last answer choice, immutable. All right, immutable. The point isn't that 19th century viewers had interpretation that didn't change. That's what immutable means. Change versus stability is not what the passage is about. Now, D is the correct answer here. Just a little bit more. The point was that 19th century viewers didn't think the paintings had just one dominant interpretation. That is what we're trying to get at. They were not ideologically rigid and were open to different meanings. In other words, the 19th century views were not undifferentiated. There was diversity in their interpretations of the art. And it's important to note again that if we go back to our passage, we're talking about something that is not, right? It is somewhat refreshing to learn that the reactions of audiences of the time were by no means uniform. So we're looking for the point that the passage is trying to make, but the questions that the word that we're asked about have different meanings. Okay, so that's why we use uniform to substitute monolithic, to also be substituted by undifferentiated. Does that make sense? This is definitely one of the more challenging questions for some students. But since there's no questions, let's move over to our last two exercises. I believe there's two more. Yes, okay. This one, in the context in which it appears, proper most nearly means blank. Okay, so proper, it is, okay, it's not highlighted here, but it has the quotation mark, so hopefully you can see it. It is almost right in the middle of this passage. As usual, if you're watching this recording, I'm going to give you some time so you can work on it yourself. And before we go over the question together. All right, that's 1 minute down the clock. Let's check it out. So the WOG, aka the Women's Olympic Games, opened up track and field, which was closed to female competitors in the official Olympics on the grounds that it was not a proper quotation marks, sport for women. Oh, I like this author because they're kind of being a little sarcastic, a little tongue-in-cheek here. So let's put our little blank there. What can we substitute proper with? So we know that this is in the 1900s, 1922, right? Women were not allowed in the Olympics, and as they were slowly creating their own or opening space for themselves, right, they implemented track and field, which was not there before because it was not a blank sport for women. As a woman myself, what do we know about discrimination against women? Or gender roles? What is it that makes a sport not be good for women? I would say people would regard it as inappropriate because it might be too against the notions of what proper women would do back in the day, which is being classy and very submissive and not being this aggressive, the athletic persona that many people had in mind. So I would put acceptable. It wasn't acceptable for women to participate in sports such as track and field, right? It wasn't proper, it wasn't acceptable. Let's go over to our answer choices. Okay, the chorus. The chorus. That sounds like decoration. It certainly does not mean decoration, but I have a hunch that out of all the answer choices, this is probably the word that most people might not know or might not be sure of. They have certainly heard it, but if they were asked point blank, oh, what is the definition of this word? They might not know. So let's leave that there and look at the other ones. Okay, so remember, we're trying to match these answer choices with acceptable. B, genuine. Genuine, does it match acceptable? No, so we can scrap that out. Ceremonial. Ceremonial doesn't really have anything to do with acceptable, especially when we're talking about, and we're not talking about a sport being ceremonial. We're kind of talking about whether it is good for women in their societal standards back in the day. So no, we can get rid of ceremonial as well. Immodest. Immodest. Okay, this is a trap word because they certainly know that I get what the author is trying to say here. That is, women were perceived one way, so as to society didn't think that women should have participated in certain sports because they were not good for them, or they were immodest, or the sports were immodest, right? But remember, we're not trying to match a word to the overall author purpose or author opinion or tone, I would say. We're trying to match it to the blank itself. So because we have a not right in front of that word, immodest will not fit. If the not wasn't there, excuse the redundancy, immodest could fit. But because we have that and we're matching to the word acceptable, immodest and acceptable are not synonyms. So we scrap that out. Complete. Complete. What is a complete sport? That completely misses the mark. It doesn't. I think they're playing, the authors or the writers of this question were playing with complete and proper, as in things that are properly made, they're usually like complete and stuff. But no, complete here doesn't fit the context. So we've confidently eliminated B, C, D, and E, which leaves us with the chorus. The chorus is a right answer. And just so I can give you the actual definition of the chorus, it means in keeping with good taste and propriety, making a good substitute for proper in this passage. Are we feeling good? We only have 4 more minutes left. So this will be our last question of the day. Exercise 7. In the context in which it is used, tabled most nearly means blank. All right. And this is somewhat long. Actually, excuse me. If you're watching this recording, we're not going to do this one. We're going to skip it because it's one of the longer passages. So let's go over to exercise 8 instead. Just because I was planning on giving you the long passage so you can read it on your own time, but we're running a little bit out of time here. Okay, in the context, exercise 8, in the context in which it is used, betrayed most nearly means, let's see what it means. So we have our passage here. I can read it for you. Let's see, where do we start? We know we're skimming a little bit before. We're talking about American colonists. We're talking about sugar, importation, plantations, imperial periphery, sophistication, and elegant. Okay, instead of England. All right, let's read over to starting in maple sugar. Maple sugar, a distinctively American product, was touted as the equal of the sugar served in the most elegant old world salons. The clearest syrups and whitest sugars which betrayed the least hint of their rustic origins, commanded premium prices. Okay, so we have our blank here. We know that we are comparing maple sugar to regular sugar, the white crystal one, and clear syrup, right? Which is used in an elegant old world salon. Then looking at the sentence here after our blank, the clearest syrups and whitest sugars, which blank the least hint of the rustic origins, meaning sugar, the whitest sugars and the clearest syrups didn't show their origins. We're associating sugar, clear syrups, and all of these things as something elegant, something that is expensive, something that is luxurious. But in reality, that byproduct comes from syrups, maple sugars, cane sugars that are ultra processed to look this way. And these can be seen as rustic, as not as elegant, right? So if they are blank, the least hint of the rustic origins, that means that they're showing the least hint. They're trying to hide the connection between the origins and the byproduct or the finished product. So revealed is showing, right? But it's because of what we have after that blank. The least hint is it revealed nothing. It revealed barely anything. So reveal is our prediction. Let's compare those up to the answer choices. Okay, we have denied. Denied doesn't really fit here because we're trying to match to reveal. Remember, we're not looking at the overall sentence, the overall passage, the overall point. We're talking about just the word, the definition of the word, and in relation to betrayed. So denied, we can eliminate. Offered up. Offered would be good. Offer is it didn't offer like a resemblance of something, but offer up usually is associated to when you're offering up something to trade for something else, when you're selling something, right? When you're trying to out offer someone else. So somebody's buying something and then you offer up. So this one doesn't really fit the meaning, so we can eliminate as well. Suggested, maybe it wouldn't come or it's not as intuitive because it doesn't seem like something when we read betrayed, right? When we read betrayed, we think of somebody who is treacherous, somebody who did you wrong. But in reality, the definition of betrayed also is giving information to the enemy, right? So you are betrayed, or it's also revealing information unconsciously. So it does fit with the word suggested, and suggested fits with our prediction of revealed, right? So we keep suggested. Let's see the rest. D, acted traitorously. Unfortunately, this is a definition of betrayed, but not the one that we're looking for based on the context. We get rid of that one. And then finally, leaked. Leaked does not fit here because now talking about the connotation of or comparing to the connotation of leaked and the actual context of the sentence or the passage is the people were trying to pass maple syrup or ultra processed maple syrup as sugar, or they wanted to hide that but like conceal it on purpose. So leaked does not, oh, excuse me. Yes, so basically leak is, okay, remember, excuse me. I said, let's rewind, and everything that I said after leaked was not accurate, because at the end we want to make sure that leaked has to be, or the answer choice that we choose has to be a textbook definition of betrayed. And that is specifically why leaked is not the correct answer choice here. So suggested is our only standing option, and that will be our correct and final answer. Okay, let me see, there's questions. No questions yet. Therefore, let's go ahead and sum up the final takeaways for this lesson. So when you see the question stem, feel free to go straight to the passage where the word is. You don't need to read the whole passage. Okay? You will be okay with reading only one sentence before or after the sentence, as long as you can understand the context, or the context surrounding the word in question. 2, to avoid all of these trap answers, you want to treat the text or the question as a text completion or a fill in the blank exercise. 3, most important, you saw how it almost got me. You want to remember that the answer choice that you pick must be a dictionary definition of the word that you have in your question, the one in quotations. And finally, as you maybe could tell, our strategy works, but the extent to which our strategy will be successful also depends on how comfortable we feel with different vocabulary. So the more that we work on vocabulary, the more that we learn how to dissect meaning from words that we are not sure of, but we know the suffix, the prefix, we know the stem, we can guess a little bit of that definition, or at least if we don't know one answer choice, if we know the rest of the definitions, we can confidently use that information to eliminate or select the right answer choice from the ones that we don't know and forget the ones that we don't know. Okay, so that is everything from me today. As there are no any other questions, I will end this today. But I hope you found this helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it, or at the very least, it was a good practice space for you to just squeeze in quick drills and work on your verbal skills. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.